She just described right now. She talked about how people have made the mistake and should not be able to give it a chance to change. And I like to refer to how we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. So the same to this person. Like if you make a mistake in the past, you shouldn't just be just judge on that one thing that you did wrong, because everybody has the opportunity to change, and in most cases, most sex offenders do change. Earlier, she also mentioned that they shouldn't have the constitutional rights of freedom, and their privacy shouldn't be private, like by the law. And I have a citation from Philip Guidance, a spokesperson from the American Civil Liberties Union, which he says, "Why is education about sex offenders only? Why not killers and robbers? Or other criminals are just as dangerous as sex offenders? Why should sex offenders be subject to this discrimination?" The opponent also explains how there was a CD-ROM made to the public, and she describes how a lot of the people actually knew the people in the CD-ROM, and I don't know how that's supposed to help her claim, because by knowing the people doesn't mean that they'll do anything towards it. And that case has already been responded to, as I described the case of the man who had been arrested in 1944, and he had the letter sent to his house talking about how he had to be forced to register for just touching the guy's knees, back in 1944. So it doesn't really seem very efficient to me that she's making that case. Also, Susan Goldberg from the Lambada Legal Defense also said that the law is a real concern, and it has the potential to sweep the more people than it should, because the requirements also have a devastating effect on people's lives. The opponents also talk about how child molesters will continue to commit the new crimes even though there's therapy. And I don't believe that, because therapy is actually really helpful, not just for sex offenders, but for any other type of therapy as well. And as Sean said earlier, offenders actually do have a problem. I mean, they do have a psychological problem. That is exactly why they should be treated with therapy. And he used a quote by Susan Prado saying that offenders should be sent to psychological care because they have psychological order, and Megans Law just frustrates them, and they are more likely to reoffend due to that. Also earlier it was mentioned how the law still remains the same, how there hasn't been any change to it, and how the only thing that it's meant for is basically to inform the public with the information and basically the address of the criminal. And in my opinion, I don't know how that's helpful, because even though this has been out there still seems to be cases of people getting raped and getting killed. So basically, just because their address is listed there doesn't mean that they're going to be there all the time. So they could also, like I said earlier, they could move from town to town. It doesn't mean that they have to stay there all the time. And I already described this case by the case of the 14-year-old who was molested in the mall by an offender who was out of state. And also another quotation I have by Robert Prankley, a sex offender researcher. He says that if someone is destined to reoffend, it is obvious that all they'll do is get in the car and drive to another town, like I just said. In general, I just believe that people who have paid their debts to society should at least have given the opportunity to lead a productive and peaceful life. And this law makes it really hard for them to do so. So this is why we should repeal Megans Law.